Hello everyone, I'm Taylor Vivanco. I would like to begin by thanking my professor, Dr. Yi, who guided me through my research and through this project, 5-Year Plan, Successes and Failures. In 2016, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, otherwise known as North Korea, assembled the first Workers' Party Congress since the 1980s to draft up the first 5-year plan since the same time almost 40 years ago. And the nation has now entered into a new 5-year plan as of this year, but my project reflects on the recent economic developments in the DPRK. So I was initially inspired to research the DPRK and their economy with recent news coverage of the nation, and what's being reported is that the DPRK has been becoming increasingly militarized. It has recently become a nuclear power, and many observers fear that the nation poses a threat to those around it, as well as the United States. What many aren't really looking into are the actual economic conditions in the DPRK. And part of the reason for that is that there's not actually much information coming out of the nation. And in the past, the nation has utilized 5 and 7-year plans to promote and organize their economy. And during these plans, they have released data reflecting on both their goals and their outputs. But the DPRK is no longer publishing this information, so I've instead had to turn to other sources to try to assemble some predictors so that I can try to get a clearer picture of the economy in the DPRK. And to do this, I've utilized both DPRK state media as well as Western media. And I've been comparing both the statements and analyses from both of these sides to try to find some truth between both of these perspectives. So here's a brief timeline of the historical developments in the DPRK. And what we see is that during the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, the economy really had a huge surge in economic growth. And part of that reason was because they relied on the Soviet Union for a lot of aid. And then during the 90s, after the Soviet Union collapsed, the DPRK's economy collapsed with it. But then during the 2000s, a series of price, wage, market, and currency reforms really allowed the nation to better manage and promote its economy. We see some economic developments. And then 2016 to 2020, is when their most recent 5-year plan occurred. So before analyzing the economy, I'd like to define a few terms that I believe need explanation so that you can really get a better understanding of the DPRK's approach to both economy and politics. So first we begin with juche, which means self-reliant. And this really is the guiding ideology of the DPRK. Juche is a thought that's formed by Kim Il-sung, who is also the founding father of the DPRK. And this ideology really emphasizes independence and sovereignty. Juche is sometimes referred to as Korean Marxism, as well as Kim Il-sungism because it was formulated by Kim Il-sung. Next, we have Songun, which means military first, and this really demands independence, and this achieves Juche through military sovereignty. So Songun is why we have seen more recent militarism as well as the race to become a nuclear power. And then we have Byungjin, which means parallel approach. And this idea has really been promoted more by current leadership and Kim Jong-un, who is the current leader of the DPRK. And this demands a dual development of both the military as well as the economy. And Byungjin is why we're seeing the first 5-year plan in almost 40 years get pushed through the Workers' Party as well as government. So here's a brief outline of the economic growth and recessions. And what we see is we see some collapse in the 90s, and then during the reform era in the 2000s, you can see there is some growth over there. And then right above me here between 2016 and 2020, you can see that there's been mixed growth during the 5-year plan. So towards the end of last year, Kim Jong-un announced that this 5-year plan had been a failure, and he proclaimed that the government was going to try harder to reverse many of those failures. However, as we see here, growth has been mixed. The nation underwent strict lockdowns, and trade completely stopped because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which is why I don't believe that this 5-year plan has been an outright failure. We see some mixed growth, and a lot of this recession can be attributed to the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we'll observe next is some other economic developments that we've been seeing over the past 5 years that show that this 5-year plan hasn't been a complete failure like many observers believe. And so here we see some images coming from Korean state media, and what we see has also been confirmed by Western media as well. And so the three main goals of this 5-year plan was really to expand agricultural development, to expand light industry, and to expand energy production. And so the DPRK has been undergoing technological development and creating new farming techniques. One study I read coming from DPRK's Kim Il-sung University was on research into different rice farming techniques, and it outlined the best way to receive the greatest yields. And agriculture output is not yet growing, but state media and Western media news outlets are both confirming that new sites are rapidly being developed, and so we'll likely see increased agricultural outputs in the near future. And the DPRK has also been promoting the availability of consumer goods in their news media, and American news sources are confirming this as well. This availability is due to both the expanded light industry as well as the opening to increased trade with nations like China. And this has really allowed the Korean people to participate in their economy with new types of goods that have been entering the market. And the image right above me shows a city full of lights, and one reporter remarked at how the city of Pyongyang did not have lights at night, but now the whole city appears to be lit within just a few years. And so the nation has been becoming increasingly energy independent with the expansion of hydroelectricity, nuclear, and solar energy sources. And this is part of the reason why I argue that the 5-year plan has not been a complete failure. The government has been experimenting with new developments to see what works, to see what doesn't, and it has simultaneously been rapidly developing the new infrastructure that will be critical to the DPRK's future economic developments. So over the past few years, we've also seen more openness of the DPRK. Juche has increasingly been incorporating international trade into his ideology of self-reliance, and we have seen the former president of the United States meet with Kim Jong-un and other party leadership. We've seen party leadership meet with President Putin and President Xi, and we've seen the nation attempt to open up their economy to increase trade. However, UN sanctions are still hurting the nation, and they pose a heavy burden on the DPRK. So what does the future hold for the DPRK with the new United States administration? Well, President Biden has claimed that he's going to be tough on North Korea. However, we've still been seeing this continued international and regional integration. And this integration, along with other recent economic developments, is why I predict that there will be continued economic growth in the DPRK. Thank you everyone for listening.